Tonight we begin with the dusty, dangerous and utterly transformative world of the Silk Road. The unofficial heart of the ancient world, the makeshift centre of trade, and the only place where a Chinese merchant, a Mongol nomad, and a Buddhist monk could all share the same evening meal. It wasn't just a path to travel, it was a place where danger, knowledge, and disease mingled freely beneath vast desert skies. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Silk Road wasn't a single road as its name might suggest. It was a vast network of trade routes spanning over 4,000 miles, connecting China with the Middle East and Europe. It existed for more than 1,500 years, from around 30 BC to the 15th century CE, and shaped our world in ways we're still feeling today. But the Silk Road wasn't just about geography or history, it was about people. The brave men and women who risked everything to cross the harshest deserts, the most treacherous mountain ranges, and the strangest lands on Earth. For every bale of silk that travelled west, 1,000 dreams, fears, and prayers travelled alongside it. These merchants carried more than goods. They carried ideas, religious beliefs, languages, sciences, and arts. Each encounter, each exchange, each venture could lead to death or a fortune. Each step could bring enlightenment or be the last one a person ever took. Tonight we'll explore not just these ancient roads and cities, but the living experiences of those who travelled them. We'll feel the harshness of the Taklamakan Desert, sample strange spices from the markets of Samarkand, and hear the camel bells echoing through high mountain passes. We'll learn about survival, about commerce, about friendships formed in adversity, and about how random encounters could change history. For the Silk Road wasn't just a journey, it was humanity's first global conversation, an exchange of culture, commerce, and ideas that connected civilizations separated by deserts, mountains, and empire. And at its heart were the stories of people, those who dared to cross boundaries, carrying their dreams, fears, and hopes into the unknown. Let us begin our journey into the world of these courageous souls, in the flickering light of campfires under desert stars, in the noisy chaos of ancient marketplaces, and on the perilous trails that once shaped the modern world we inhabit. You've traded your last piece of jade, sold the extra plot of land inherited from your father, and borrowed silver from 3 cousins who expect double in return. You've made the decision that could either bring your family wealth for generations or leave your bones bleaching in some nameless desert. The Silk Road beckons, not with kindness, but with possibility. The preparations began years ago, though you didn't know it then. Every coin saved, every luxury denied, all for this chance to walk the path that connects worlds. Your wife has sewn secret pockets inside your clothes, places where silver can hide from bandits or corrupt officials. Your oldest son helped you count and recount your trading goods until the numbers danced in your dreams. Your daughter slipped a tiny jade Buddha into your pack when she thought you weren't looking, protection for a journey she fears will claim you. They don't say it, but their eyes speak clearly. Half the people who start this journey never return. You know this, everyone knows. But the profits? Oh, the profits could enrich your family for generations. The stories of merchants returning with enough wealth to buy entire villages aren't just tales. You've met one such man now living in a house with jade-inlaid floors and 30 servants. His caravan survived. Yours might too. What to bring? This question haunts your waking hours. Every item must earn its place, must be worth its weight across thousands of miles. Too much, and your camels collapse beneath the burden. Too little, an opportunity slips through empty fingers. You choose silk, of course, light, valuable, and desperately wanted in Western lands. Small packages of tea, carefully wrapped in oil paper to keep moisture at bay. Porcelain cups so fine you can see shadows through them. Bronze mirrors polished to painful brightness, each item chosen not just for its market value, but for its portability, its durability through rain and sun and sandstorm. You find yourself in the curious position of becoming both a merchant and merchandise. Everything about you is now an investment, your knowledge, your instincts, your body itself. You run your hands over calluses intentionally built on your feet through months of walking barefoot on stones. You test your thirst by going days on little water, training your body to endure what lies ahead. You mentally inventory the scraps of language collected over months. Enough Sogdian to haggle, enough Tocharian to ask directions, enough Persian to beg for mercy if needed, none mastered, all potentially life-saving. The nights grow restless. Dreams of desert thirst wake you sweating. Visions of mountain passes with chasms so deep you can't see the bottom. Nightmares of unfamiliar diseases that turn skin to scale and breath to fire. You wake your wife with your tossing and she pretends it's the summer heat, not fear that disturbs your sleep. Each morning brings more farewells disguised as preparations. Your children follow you around the house, not speaking of departure but finding reasons to be near. Neighbours bring small gifts, a special blend of tea, a pair of sturdy sandals, a tiny scroll with prayers for safe passage. Their goodbyes are heavy with unspoken eulogies. When you catch your mother instructing your wife on the proper funeral rites, you don't interrupt. It's not pessimism, it's practicality. The dead deserve proper passage wherever they fall. In the marketplaces, you seek out those who've travelled west before. They've returned missing fingers, eyes, pieces of their souls, but they returned. You buy them cups of fermented mare's milk and absorb their warnings like scripture. The desert doesn't kill you quickly, it cooks you slowly, beginning with hope. In Kashgar, trust no one who approaches you first. The honest merchants wait for you to find them. The mountain sickness comes suddenly. When your thoughts turn strange and your steps uncertain, descend immediately. Many who ignore these signs never take another step. Caravans that travel too fast lose camels. Caravans that travel too slow lose men. Find the middle path. You memorize landmarks you've never seen, learn to navigate by stars you've never located, and practice haggling in tongues that twist your mouth into painful shapes. Your children laugh at your pronunciation, then grow silent when they remember why you're learning. The most crucial preparation isn't in your packs or your purse, it's finding the right caravan. Travelling alone on the Silk Road isn't just foolish, it's suicide. The caravan isn't just company, it's survival. You spend weeks visiting tea houses where caravan leaders gather, listening more than speaking. You observe how they treat their servants, how they settle disputes, whether their eyes dart away when discussing dangerous passes. Some caravans are little more than bandit bait, led by fools or worse. Others are too cautious, so risk-averse they'll waste months avoiding necessary dangers. You need the balance, experienced enough to survive, bold enough to profit. You find your answer in a weathered man named Mahmud, whose beard holds more grey than black, whose left hand is missing 2 fingers, but whose eyes miss nothing. His caravan has made the journey 12 times, 8 returns, a ratio better than most. He quotes a price for joining that makes your breath catch, then shows you a ledger of what previous merchants earned under his guidance. The numbers make your family's sacrifice seem suddenly small. You agree before sunset. The night before departure brings a final ritual. Your family prepares every dish you've ever loved, flavours to hold in memory across tasteless months of travel rations. Your wife doesn't cry until she thinks you're sleeping. Your youngest draws a picture of your return, complete with laden camels and a tower of gold. You tuck it into your innermost pocket next to your heart. Dawn breaks cold and clear. The caravan assembles at the city's western gate. 30 merchants, 60 camels, a dozen guards with faces like stone and weapons kept sharp. Goods are checked and rechecked. Water skins are filled. Last-minute doubts are swallowed with bitter tea. Children cling until pulled away. Wives press their foreheads to their husbands in silent prayer. The city feels suddenly precious, its familiar discomforts now beautiful against the vast unknown that waits beyond the gate. Mahmud gives no grand speech, no inspirational words, just a nod, a quiet command to the lead camel driver, and the caravan lurches into motion. The first step feels impossibly significant, like crossing between worlds. Behind you lies everything known and loved. Ahead stretches the legendary road that has swallowed armies and exhaled empires. You don't look back. Not because you lack feeling, but because those who look back, it's said, never complete the journey. The dust of your first steps rises into the morning air. The camel bells create a rhythm that will become the soundtrack of your existence. The weight of your family's hopes settles across your shoulders as the weight of your goods settles across your camel's back. The Silk Road has claimed you now. Whether it returns you, richer, wiser, changed beyond recognition, or keeps your bones as tribute will be determined one step at a time. But for now, you focus only on the next ridge, the next valley, the next hour of sunlight. The great cities of the Silk Road, Samarkand with its blue domes, Bukhara with its 100 caravanserais, mysterious Kashgar at the edge of the desert, exist now only as names and hopes. Names that you speak like prayers as the familiar world disappears behind you and this dusty, dangerous, utterly transformative path of the Silk Road unfolds beneath your feet. The caravan moves like a living creature, a sinuous beast with 100 legs, a dozen eyes, and one mind. 3 days into your journey, you've already learned its anatomy. Head, body, tail, each segment with its purpose, its hierarchy, its unspoken rules. This isn't merely a collection of travellers moving in the same direction. It's an organism born of necessity and desperation, one that will live, breathe, and possibly die as a single entity for months to come. At dawn, the caravan unfolds itself slowly. Leaders emerge from tents before the sun breaks the horizon. Camel drivers check hobbles and loads while merchants pack their personal belongings with the care of priests handling relics. By the time the sky turns from black to deep blue, the temporary village that formed overnight dissolves back into the serpentine line that will wind its way across the landscape until dusk. The caravan's head is its brain, eyes, and voice. The leader rides with several seasoned scouts who rotate forward positions. You notice how the entire procession responds to signals from this front segment, slowing at a raised hand, stopping at a whistled note that carries over the creak of saddles and the jingle of bells. The leader's word is law, not from power or noble birth, but from experience. He knows where water hides beneath the sand, he can smell a storm hours before clouds appear. And most importantly, he knows which local warlords can be trusted with tribute, and which will take your gold and your head regardless. A caravan is only as strong as its weakest decision, you hear the leader tell the merchants one evening, his scarred face orange in the firelight. Question me in private if you must, but never in front of the men, and never disobey. The desert forgives no one, but it punishes the divided first. Behind the head rides the guard captain, with arms like oak branches and a face cross-hatched with old wounds. He commands the guards split between the caravan's edges. Some are former soldiers from forgotten wars. Others are nomads with faces weathered like old leather and eyes that miss nothing. They sleep with one hand on their weapons and can shoot a moving target from horseback at full gallop. You notice how the guards communicate with subtle hand gestures, positioning themselves where the terrain offers the greatest threat. On open plains, they ride wide, creating a protective perimeter. In narrow valleys, they close ranks, weapons visible, eyes scanning the ridgelines without pause. They say little, eat quickly, and seem to require less sleep than ordinary men. The guards aren't paid to be friendly, an older merchant whispers to you one night as you watch the captain sharpen his curved blade with methodical precision. They're paid to keep us alive long enough to regret this journey properly. The heart of the caravan, its true purpose, is the merchants and their precious cargo. Dozens of traders from many lands, each betting everything on this journey. You begin to learn their stories around evening fires. One carries silk and medicinal herbs from the forest south of the Yangtze. Another transports glassware so delicate it's packed in wooden boxes filled with goose down. A young merchant nervously guards a single chest of tea so rare the emperor once paid its weight in silver. Between merchants ride the translators and guides, men who speak 5 languages fluently and can bargain in 10 more. Indispensable as the air itself, they bridge worlds with their tongues, transforming threatening words into diplomatic exchanges, hostile gestures into cultural misunderstandings. The chief translator has travelled the road dozens of times and survived the several caravan massacres. His voice shifts like water between languages, sometimes changing so completely in tone and rhythm that he seems to become a different person with each tongue. The difference between "we come in peace" and "we surrender" in some languages is a single breath, you hear him explain while teaching basic phrases to newcomers. Exhale too long and you've just handed over your caravan instead of greeting a village elder. But the true backbone of the caravan, its muscle and endurance, are the camels and their handlers. Dozens of Bactrian camels, 2-humped giants bred for cold mountain nights and scorching days, each carrying up to 400 pounds of goods lashed to wooden frame saddles. They process in groups of 8 to 10, managed by handlers who formed relationships with these beasts that transcend the division between human and animal. Camels aren't just transport, they're your lifeline. Ugly, stubborn, and smelly, but more precious than gold in the desert. A good camel will sense water from miles away and warn of approaching sandstorms before any human notices. Their padded feet move across sand with surprising grace, and their ability to go 10 days without water seems like sorcery rather than biology. They complain constantly, groaning, snorting, and occasionally screaming with voices that sound disturbingly human. But they keep walking as a step after relentless step. Never trust a sullen camel, advises a weathered handler when he catches you staring apprehensively at your allocated beast. The quiet ones are planning something wicked. The loud ones tell you exactly where you stand. This one, he pats your camel's bristly neck, calls me a dog's mother every morning, but she hasn't bitten anyone in weeks. By the 5th day, you've settled into the rhythm of caravan life. Wake before dawn, cold breakfast of flatbread and dried fruit. Load the camels while reciting silent prayers that your goods remain intact. Walk until midday, leading your camel rather than riding to spare its strength. Brief rest in whatever shade can be found. Walk until sunset. Make camp. Eat a hot meal of rice, occasionally supplemented with dried meat softened in broth. Sleep. Repeat. The pattern becomes a meditation, steps marking time instead of hours. You learn to hear the caravan's music, the synchronized percussion of camel feet on hard ground, the tinkling bells that help maintain spacing in darkness or dust, the creak of loads shifting, the multilingual murmur of conversations that rise and fall like waves. The jingling of camel bells, voices in dozens of languages, and the scent of humans, animals, spices, and hope blend into a symphony of movement. At night, when the caravan circles for protection, these sounds soften but never quite disappear. Someone is always awake, always watching, always listening. The desert darkness is never quite silent, and you're never quite alone. Social hierarchies emerge with natural inevitability. By the 2nd week, you know who can be trusted with a waterskin, who tells stories worth the listening, who snores like thunder, and who might steal given the opportunity. You learn which merchants form evening prayer groups, which ones gamble with bone dice until midnight, and which ones record every detail of the journey in careful characters on precious paper. Everyone has a role. Everyone contributes. The lazy or selfish don't last long on the Silk Road. Even those who began as strangers quickly understand the brutal mathematics of survival. United you might live, divided you will certainly perish. When a merchant falls ill with fever, others take turns carrying his goods so his camel can bear his weight instead. Not from kindness, though kindness exists here too, but from the understanding that tomorrow it could be you burning with fever, you depending on the strength of others. The desert strips men to their essence, the caravan leader tells you when you express surprise at the generosity shown to the sick man. Some turn cruel, some discover the courage they never knew they possessed, but all become honest versions of themselves. There is no room for pretense when each day might be your last. The caravan creates its own laws, its own justice. When a young camel handler is caught stealing coins from a sleeping merchant, the leader doesn't execute him, as is his right. Instead, the boy is assigned the worst duties, cleaning dung, carrying extra water, and his rations are halved for 10 days. His shame is punishment enough, his labour repayment for his crime. In the caravan, every person has value that extends beyond moral judgment. A thief's strong back is still needed. A liar's keen eyes can still spot danger. As your 2nd week on the road ends, you realise the caravan has transformed from a collection of individuals into something greater. When danger appears, a dust cloud on the horizon that might be approaching riders, a narrowing pass that forces the caravan to compress, you feel the collective tension, the unified focus. When joy comes, a freshwater spring richer than expected, a cool breeze after days of punishing heat, you share in the collective relief, the communal gratitude. The strangers who nodded warily at one another at the city gates now pass water skins without hesitation, now know each other's children's names, now entrust their lives to one another daily. The caravan has become a floating village, a moving nation with its own customs, language, and loyalties. And as the familiar world recedes further behind you, as the landscapes grow stranger and the challenges more daunting, this caravan, this temporary family born of commerce and courage, becomes your world entire. The bonds formed in dust and danger will either carry you to distant lands and home again, or they will be the last human connections you know. Either way, there is no turning back. The caravan moves forward, always forward, its 100 legs in rhythm, its dozen eyes alert, its single mind focused on the horizon where danger and fortune wait in equal measure. The caravan that now cradles your existence has travelled for 10 days since leaving the last outpost. 10 days of your body learning the camel's sway, 10 nights of stars wheeling overhead while muscles you never knew existed scream in protest. And yet, as the dawn breaks on the 11th day, you realize with a cold certainty that the journey has not truly begun until now. Before you stretches the Taklamakan Desert. "They call it the go in and don't come out desert," murmurs the weathered guide, his voice carrying just enough to for those nearest to hear. The words hang in the air like a vulture circling prey. The sand beneath your feet isn't just hot, it seems alive, waiting to swallow the careless. You look ahead at the endless sea of dunes rippling to the horizon. The caravan that seemed so massive, so permanent, now appears fragile and temporary against this vast emptiness. The camels sense it too, shifting nervously, their usual complaints subdued to wary grunts. The desert doesn't announce itself with fanfare. There's no clear line where civilization ends and desolation begins. The vegetation simply grows sparser, the soil beneath more sandy, until one day you realize you haven't seen a living plant since morning. The transition happens in your mind as much as under your feet, a psychological boundary crossed when you understand that here, humans are merely tolerated visitors. Morning travel is bearable, almost pleasant in the lingering cool of dawn. By midday, the sun has transformed into an enemy. It beats down with relentless fury, reflecting off the sand until you're assaulted by heat from above and below. Your skin burns, then blisters, then hardens. Your lips crack so deeply that smiling becomes impossible. Water, carefully rationed, tastes of leather from the carrying pouches, yet nothing has ever been more precious. "Take smaller sips, more often," advises an old merchant, whose face is mapped with deep creases. The desert doesn't care how thirsty you are. When your water is gone, you're gone. You learn to move like the desert dwellers do, efficiently, purposefully, conserving energy for when it truly matters. Each step is placed with intention, each breath is measured. You develop a rhythm of existence unlike anything you've known before, as if the desert demands attacks of sweat and suffering for passage. Then comes the wind. It starts as a distant hissing, like secrets being whispered just beyond hearing. The camel handlers immediately grow tense, scanning the horizon with practiced eyes. "Sandstorm," the caravan leader announces, his voice carrying neither panic nor fear, only certainty. "Prepare yourselves." What follows is a choreography of solvitor that the caravan has clearly performed before. Camels are arranged in tight circles, their bodies creating windbreaks. Goods are covered with oiled cloths. People wrap themselves in layers of fabric until only their eyes remain visible. The sky turns amber, then brown. The air thickens until breathing feels like drowning in a dust. You wrap your face, close your eyes, and pray to whatever gods might be listening. Prayer comes easily in a sandstorm. Not formal recitations from holy texts, but primal pleas born from the certainty that you are utterly insignificant against the desert's wrath. The wind howls like a living creature, tearing at your coverings, forcing grit into every crevice of your body and possessions. You taste it, breathe it, feel it abrading your skin even through layers of protection. Hours pass, or perhaps it's days. Time loses meaning in the brown darkness. When the storm finally relents, the landscape has completely changed. Dunes have shifted, paths are erased. The caravan leader consults with guides, studies the stars, and makes adjustments to the route that only he understands. You learn that the desert is not static but fluid, constantly rewriting itself. Yesterday's safe passage could be today's burial ground. This is why solo travelers perish here, not just from thirst or heat, but from the desert's deception. It changes the rules without warning. The oases, when you finally reach one, seems miraculous. Green erupts from the earth like a prayer answered. Water bubbles from hidden springs. Date palms offer shade that feels like a gift from heaven. The caravan's mood transforms instantly from endurance to celebration, but the experienced travelers temper their relief. An oasis is not safety, warns a silk merchant as he carefully washes desert dust from his precious bundles. It is merely a pause in dying. Indeed, the waterhole brings its own dangers. Other caravans converge here, not all with honourable intentions. Local tribesmen appear, ostensibly offering guidance, but studying your caravan's wealth with calculating eyes. Diseases spread more easily where people gather, and lingering too long depletes the precious resources that make the oasis valuable. 2 days of rest, water replenishment, and minor repairs, and the caravan moves on. The pattern repeats: merciless sun, frigid nights, the constant search for water, the vigilance against raiders who materialize from the dunes like spirits. And then the terrain changes. The Taklamakan gradually yields to foothills. The air grows cooler, somehow heavier with moisture. You feel your body responding, skin becoming less paper-like, lungs expanding more easily, but the relief is short-lived. Ahead loom the Pamir Mountains, the roof of the world. Where the desert threatened to burn you alive, the mountains promise a different death. One of cold, of falling, of the thin air that makes your heart pound and head swim. Paths so narrow your camel's load scrapes both cliff walls, with a drop so deep you can't see the bottom. One misstep means death. This isn't storyteller's exaggeration, but simple truth. The mountain passages make the desert seem almost kind by comparison. The caravan restructures itself for mountain travel. The long, sinuous line tightens. Experienced climbers take the lead. The weakest camels are relieved of their heaviest burdens. The guards position themselves differently, now watching not just for human threats, but for falling rocks, weakened paths, and signs of impending avalanche. You're above 15,000 feet now. Each breath delivers less than half the oxygen you're accustomed to. Simple tasks, securing a load, preparing food, even thinking clearly, become monumental challenges. Conversations reduce to essential communication, each word costing precious energy. At night, despite exhaustion, sleep comes fitfully. Your body jerks awake, gasping, convinced it's suffocating. The mountain air thins your blood, explains a Tibetan trader who seems unaffected by the altitude. It also thins the barrier between this world and others. The dreams you have here are not always your own. Indeed, your nights are filled with vivid visions that feel like memories you've never made. You see cities you've never visited, faces you've never met, all with crystal clarity. By day, peculiar clarity alternates with confusion. The veterans of the route recognize the symptoms and keep watch over those struggling with mountain sickness. The passes themselves present technical challenges that seem insurmountable. Paths barely wider than a man's shoulders twist along cliff faces. Makeshift bridges span gorges, swaying terrifyingly with each step. Some consist of nothing more than rope and wooden slats, aged by weather and countless crossings. Look straight ahead, never down, advises the caravan leader as your group approaches a particularly daunting crossing. The bridge has stood for 50 years. It will bear your weight today. You're not convinced, but choice has long since departed from your journey. The only options now are forward or retreat, and retreat means failure, means returning home with nothing to show for the hardship already endured. So you step onto creaking wood, feeling it flex beneath your weight, hearing the wind whistle through the chasm below. Your knuckles whiten as you grip the guide rope. One step, another. Don't look down. The mantra repeats in your mind until solid ground returns beneath your feet. The mountain rivers present their own challenges, raging torrents fed by distant glaciers, frigid enough to kill within minutes of immersion. Crossing methods vary by season and location. Sometimes there are stone bridges built by ancient hands. Sometimes the caravan must construct its own passage, lashing together logs and rope in a precarious alliance. The strongest swimmers sometimes carry guide ropes across calmer sections, their skin turning blue with cold. Weather in the mountains arrives without warning. Morning sun burns your skin. Afternoon brings winds that cut like knives. Night delivers cold that seeps into your bones. A clear sky can transform to blackness within minutes, dropping hail that bruises exposed flesh or snow that obscures the path entirely. The caravan might huddle in mountain caves for days, waiting for passes to clear, rationing supplies that were meant to last until the next trading post. You learn to read the land or you die. It's that simple. The Silk Road forgives no mistakes. This bitter truth is reinforced when your group passes the remains of less fortunate travellers, bleached bones half buried in scree, rusted metal that once was a merchant's prized possession, tatters of cloth fluttering from rocks like prayer flags for the deceased. The caravan doesn't linger at these markers. Moving on is the only tribute offered. You develop new senses on the mountain paths. You learn to feel vibrations through your feet that might signal unstable ground. You notice how certain birds fly before storms arrive. You recognize that peculiar silence that precedes a snowslide. The mountains are teaching you, reshaping you just as surely as they reshape themselves with each seasonal cycle. Navigation relies on ancient knowledge passed between caravans. Certain rock formations serve as landmarks, the eagle's beak, the widow's tears, the sleeping Buddha. Stars guide the journey when visible. Memory fills the gaps when clouds obscure the night sky. The most experienced guides have traced these routes so many times they could walk them blindfolded, feeling the correct path through the soles of their feet. Yet for all its hardship, the mountains offer moments of transcendent beauty that sear themselves into your memory. Sunrise painting distant peaks in gold and rose, valleys so vast they seem to contain entire worlds. The perfect silence that descends after snowfall, as if the universe itself has paused to listen. Even the air tastes different here. Cleaner, sharper, more real somehow than anything you've breathed before. The desert strips away your body, says a Buddhist monk who joined the caravan in the last trading post. The mountains strip away your thoughts. By journey's end, you'll discover what remains when both are gone. His words echo in your mind as you descend from the highest passes into the valleys beyond. The caravan's mood lightens as oxygen returns to your blood, as green appears again in the landscape. Bodies that adapted to the brutal ascent now must readjust to descent. Different muscles scream in protest. Knees that locked for uphill climbs now bend to absorb the impact of downward steps. The psychological impact of these landscape extremes manifests differently in each traveller. Some grow withdrawn, speaking only when necessary. Others become almost manic, laughing too loudly at small amusements. A few develop peculiar rituals, touching certain objects in a specific order, muttering phrases before drinking water. The veterans recognize these as normal adaptations to abnormal circumstances. The desert doesn't just challenge your body, it tests your mind, your spirit, your very sense of being. This testing continues as the caravan transitions from mountains back to lower elevations. The land becomes gentler but no less challenging. Vast steppes where summer heat bakes the earth and winter winds freeze the breath in your lungs. Rivers must still be crossed, now wider but sometimes calmer. Grasslands that appear featureless to your untrained eye are filled with subtle markers that the guides read like scripture. You've been transformed by the terrain. Your body has hardened in ways that no planned training could achieve. Your mind has expanded and contracted, learning to focus with laser precision on immediate survival, while also opening to a broader understanding of your own insignificance against these ancient landscapes. The self-important concerns you carried from home seem laughably trivial now. Each geographical transition brings new challenges. The steppes offer less shelter from storms. Forests provide cover for predators, both animal and human. Marshlands breed insects that carry fever. There is no perfect landscape on the Silk Road, only different varieties of hardship requiring different strategies for survival. Gradually you realize that you're developing the watchful eyes and careful movements of the veteran travelers. You find yourself noticing details that would have escaped you months earlier. How certain cloud formations predict weather changes, how the behavior of local wildlife signals safety or danger, how the taste of water reveals secrets about the land it flows through. These hard-won skills will serve you well in the civilized areas ahead, for the Silk Road is never truly safe, only differently dangerous as it winds through the domains of kings and warlords. The terrain of politics and profit can be as treacherous as any mountain pass, the currents of cultural misunderstanding as deadly as any desert storm. But for now, as your caravan crests a final ridge and sees the distant outline of the next city on the horizon, there is a moment of collective exhalation. You've survived what many consider the most grueling section of the journey, not unchanged. No one crosses such landscapes and remains the same person, but alive, bearing stories that those who remain safely at home would scarcely believe. The caravan leader allows a brief rest to appreciate the view and the achievement it represents. No grand speeches are made, none are needed. Every person standing on this overlook understands what it took to reach this point. The shared glances between travellers carry more meaning than words could express. Tomorrow you'll descend into the complex terrain of human civilization, with its own codes and dangers. But tonight, you'll make camp one last time under the vast sky that has become more familiar to you than any roof. You'll sit beside fires with people who began as strangers, but now know your strengths and weaknesses more intimately than childhood friends. You'll listen to the night sounds of a land that has tried to kill you a dozen different ways and yet somehow also made you more alive than you've ever been. This is the paradox of the Silk Road's most challenging terrains. They take everything from you, comfort, certainty, sometimes even hope, and yet leave you strangely enriched. The desert's immensity has expanded something within you. The mountain's heights have elevated more than just your physical form. You understand now why some travellers, having finally reached safety, turn back to these brutal landscapes with expressions resembling love. After days spent navigating the merciless terrain, whether the burning Taklamakan or the breathless heights of the Pamirs, night falls like a benediction across the Silk Road. This transition from movement to stillness carries its own rhythm, as ancient as the trade route itself. When the sun drops, the caravan stops, and a small world is erected within minutes. You've learned the choreography by now, finding your place in this nightly ritual without conscious thought. The moment the caravan leader raises his hand at sunset, the transformation begins. Camels kneel with grateful groans, their day's labour complete. Experienced hands move with practiced efficiency, unloading essential supplies, establishing the camp's perimeter, selecting the optimal position for fires. What seemed chaotic in your first weeks now reveals itself as a perfect system, each traveller playing their assigned role in this temporary civilization. The organisation is not random but strategic. The caravan arranges itself in concentric circles, valuable goods and vulnerable members at the centre, then sleeping areas, then cooking fires, with the animals and guards forming the outermost ring. This living architecture provides protection against both natural elements and human threats. Different caravans have different traditions, but all share this fundamental concern for security. The traders from Samarkand favour a square formation. Persian caravans prefer a circle. Travelling monks arrange themselves according to celestial alignments. Yet the purpose remains identical: to create order within chaos, safety within danger. The most critical part of establishing camp is the fire. Not one, but many, spaced carefully around the perimeter and within the central areas. Each serves multiple purposes. Fire is life. It cooks your food, warms your body, keeps predators at bay, both animal and human, and beneath its light, strangers become companions. You watch as the fire tenders work their magic, coaxing flames from the meagre fuel carried from the last wooded area or gathered along the way. Dried camel dung, desert scrub, broken pieces of wooden crates deemed too damaged to repair. In the desert, where every stick is precious, nothing goes to waste. They build the fires differently depending on the terrain and weather. High flames for cold mountain nights, low and steady for windswept plateaus, small and carefully shielded in territories known for bandits where too much light might attract unwanted attention. As darkness settles fully, the transformation of the caravan becomes complete. The daytime collection of burdened animals and dusty travellers metamorphoses into a floating village, an island of humanity in a sea of darkness. Voices that were conserved during the day's march now loosen. Languages blend as traders, pilgrims and guides gather around the flames. The hierarchy of the road relaxes slightly, though never disappears entirely. Food seems to materialize from nowhere, though you've come to understand the careful rationing system that makes these meals possible. From hiding places in saddlebags and hidden pockets come treasured spices, preserved fruits, dried meats, and mud-hard biscuits. Common provisions are supplemented with whatever might have been gathered along the day's journey: desert herbs, mountain roots, occasionally fresh game when the hunters have been successful. The caravan's cooks, often merchants who have discovered their secondary skills are as valuable as their trade goods, transform these humble ingredients into something approaching comfort. After a day when your body has been pounded by the saddle and your skin scoured by wind, even a simple soup tastes like a royal feast. You've noticed how jealously guarded some recipes are, passed down through generations of Silk Road travellers. The Kashmiri merchant never reveals what gives his tea its distinctive flavour. The Sogdian trader keeps curious eyes away from his pea as he adds mysterious powders to the communal stew. These culinary secrets are more than pride. They're connections to distant homes, to identities that might otherwise dissolve amid the vastness of the journey. As hunger subsides, the sharing begins. Not just of food, but of stories, music, news, and precious information about the path ahead. This exchange of words is as vital to the Silk Road as the trade of silk and spice. A Persian musician produces a small stringed instrument from a padded case, its delicate form having somehow survived the punishing journey. A Buddhist monk from the distant eastern lands chants softly, the strange tones rising and falling like the mountains you've traversed. A merchant recounts political changes in the last city, which guards can be bribed, which officials must be respected, which routes are currently watched by tax collectors. The tales grow taller as the night deepens. You listen to a turban-wrapped man describe cities where the streets are paved with coloured tiles, where fountains flow with sweet water, where the marketplace never closes. Another speaks of mountain passes haunted by spirits who lead travellers astray. A third recounts his encounter with a caravan that carried a live elephant as a gift for a distant emperor. Some stories you believe, others you question, but all become part of the invisible cargo carried by every Silk Road traveller, the accumulated lore of 10,000 journeys. Above this ephemeral community stretches the night sky, vast beyond comprehension, brilliant in its clarity. Far from the smoke and lanterns of cities, the stars here are not mere pinpricks but blazing entities that seem close enough to touch. Stars so bright and numerous they seem like dust scattered across black silk. In the city, you never truly see the sky. In the desert, you can never escape it. This celestial canopy is more than beauty. It's the night's most crucial navigational tool. You've watched the caravan leader and guide studying these patterns with careful attention, confirming tomorrow's direction, measuring the season's progress. Different cultures within the caravan read different stories in these same stars. To the Chinese merchant, that cluster represents celestial bureaucrats. To the Persian trader, they form the shape of a hunting lion. To the Greek-speaking guide, they tell tales of ancient heroes, yet all rely on their unchanging positions to find their way across a changing earth. As conversation gradually dwindles, the night watch begins in earnest. The guards, who may have seemed to participate in the evening's conviviality, have in fact remained vigilant, their attention never fully diverted from the darkness beyond the fire's light. Now they organise themselves into shifts, each group responsible for specific hours. Some caravans use elaborate system, bronze bells rung at precise intervals, coded whistles exchanged between distant posts, small sand clocks to measure the passing hours. Others rely on simpler methods, the position of certain stars, the changing shadows cast by the moon. Despite the guards' presence, security remains everyone's concern. You sleep with your most valuable possessions close to your body, money sewn into your clothes, small treasures tucked into boots, important documents in leather pouches around your neck. The most experienced travellers have developed ingenious hiding places, false bottoms in ordinary containers, secret pockets accessible only when garments are removed in precise sequence. Trust exists within the caravan, but it is always limited, always conditional. The sounds of the desert night create their own mysterious language, the distant howl of wolves, the rustle of small creatures in sparse vegetation, the whisper of sand shifting in the night breeze. In the mountains, different sounds predominate, the crack of freezing water, the groan of ancient trees, sometimes the unsettling rumble of earth shifting far below, or your ears have sharpened over the journey, learning to distinguish between normal night sounds and those that might signal danger. Sleeping arrangements reflect the practical realities of the road. There are no private chambers, no soft beds, no luxury beyond what can be carried on camelback. You sleep in groups for warmth and protection, bodies arranged like puzzle pieces to conserve space and share heat. The ground beneath might be prepared with woven mats, animal skins, or cloth padding if available. More often, particularly in the desert, you simply clear away the larger stones and make peace with the discomfort. You sleep on hard ground, wrapped in wool that itches, listening to snoring in 12 languages, and yet somehow you dream. And the dreams that come in these wild places are unlike any you've known before, vivid, strange, sometimes prophetic. Veterans of the road say it's the thin air in the mountains or minerals in the desert water, or perhaps the proximity of so many different souls thinking in different languages. Whatever the cause, these dreams become part of the journey's mythology, discussed over morning tea, interpreted by those claiming skill in such matters, sometimes even guiding decisions about routes and risks. The relationships formed in these night camps are complex, layered with both tension and intimacy. People who might never exchange words in their home cities, due to caste, religion, profession, or status, find themselves sharing food, space, and conversation by necessity. A merchant prince might listen to a camel driver's advice about weather patterns. A scholar monk might learn practical medicine from an illiterate herbalist. The road creates its own social order based less on birth or wealth than on knowledge, experience, and utility to the collective. Yet dangers remain, perhaps more subtle than the obvious threats of terrain, but no less real. Theft occurs despite precautions, arguments flare over perceived slights or resources, cultural misunderstandings erupt into confrontations. The night sometimes brings out both the best and worst in travellers, generosity alongside greed, wisdom alongside prejudice. The caravan leader serves as judge and mediator, his authority absolute in matters that might threaten the group's cohesion or safety. Throughout the night, the unseen threats of the Silk Road hover at the edges of consciousness. Bandits study caravans from distant ridgelines, calculating risk against potential reward. Wild animals circle downwind, assessing the strange mixture of scents. The elements themselves, wind, cold, heat, test the boundaries of the camp's defences. Sleep comes despite these dangers, or perhaps because facing them directly would make travel impossible. The deepest hours of night bring a quality of silence found nowhere else, a stillness so profound it feels almost solid. In this quietude, even the most hardened merchants sometimes find themselves contemplating matters beyond profit and survival. The immensity of landscape, the ancient path beneath their feet, the countless travellers who have passed this way before, these thoughts arrive unbidden in the darkness. Many great religions have been spread along the Silk Road, not just by dedicated missionaries, but by ordinary travellers who, facing the vastness of desert and sky, found themselves suddenly receptive to questions of existence. In the city, you worry about tomorrow. On the Silk Road at night, you wonder about eternity. This philosophical mood rarely survives until dawn. As the eastern sky lightens, first a subtle shift from black to deepest blue, then a spreading glow that silhouettes distant mountains or dunes, the camp stirs with renewed purpose. The transition from night to day mirrors the evening's transformation, but in reverse, and with greater urgency. Before the sun even cracks the horizon, the camp dissolves. By first light, you're moving again, as if the night never happened. The most experienced travellers are already in motion while others still shake off sleep. Tea water boils over quickly rekindled fires. Food is minimal but essential. Dried fruit perhaps, flatbread prepared the previous evening, a handful of nuts. The animals must be loaded before the day's heat builds, the fires extinguished properly, the site checked to ensure nothing of value is left behind. Some caravans practice a formal erasure of their presence, smoothing the ground where they slept, scattering the ashes of their fires, leaving as little evidence as possible of their passing. These dawn rituals carry their own significance. You've observed how different travellers honour the day's beginning according to their faiths. Prostrations toward Mecca, sutras chanted to the rising sun, water offerings to ancestors, silent meditations. These devotions are brief but sincere, acknowledging the dangers that each new day brings. Even those without formal religion often develop their own routines, small superstitions or practices believed to bring protection on the road. As the caravan reforms into its travelling configuration, the temporary community of the night folds back into the more rigid structure of the day. The intimacy fostered around evening fires recedes, replaced by the necessary focus on the journey ahead. Conversations become practical again. Water sources, landmarks, potential hazards. The shared vulnerability of the night camp becomes a memory, stored away with all the other experiences that gradually transform strangers into a cohesive travelling unit. You take your place in the line, muscles stiff from the hard ground, mind already calculating the challenges of the day's terrain. The night's dreams and conversations have already begun to fade, replaced by the immediate concerns of survival. Yet something remains, a deepened understanding perhaps, a strengthened bond with your fellow travellers, another layer added to your evolving identity as a person of the road. The night has changed you, just as surely as the day's hardships have. The Silk Road works its transformation not just through dramatic passages and dangerous crossings, but through these quieter hours when humanity gathers against the darkness, creating momentary havens of warmth and connection in the midst of indifferent vastness. Every night camp is both an ending and a beginning, the close of one day's journey, the preparation for the next. In this rhythm of gathering and dispersing, the true heart of the Silk Road reveals itself. As the caravan moves forward into the morning light, the night's campsite quickly disappears behind you, erased by distance and the immensity of the landscape. But its effects remain, invisible yet essential, another thread woven into the complex fabric of your transformation from city dweller to Silk Road traveller. After weeks traversing merciless terrain, the burning Taklamakan, the breathless Pamir heights, the endless steppes, your caravan crests a final rise. The horizon, though long dominated by nature's harsh geometries, suddenly transforms. Human shapes emerge, walls, towers, domes. The outline of Samarkand rises from the haze like a mirage. Its blue domes glitter like emeralds in the sun, not a city but a poem built of stone and dreams. Your first glimpse of a Silk Road city after the emptiness of the wilderness strikes with physical force. The caravan falls silent, even the camels seeming to understand the significance of the moment. Veterans and first-time travellers alike pause, taking in the view. Here, finally, is the promise that has sustained you through countless hardships: civilization, comfort, opportunity. The approach to the city unfolds gradually. What appeared as a unified shape from a distance resolves into complexity. A sprawling urban centre surrounded by mud brick suburbs, agricultural fields arranged in geometric patterns, waterways channeled with mathematical precision, and roads converging like a spider's web with the city at its centre. Around Samarkand's perimeter, smaller villages and settlements cluster like courtiers around a monarch. Your caravan's pace quickens naturally. Even the most trail-worn travellers straighten their posture, dust off their clothes, and prepare for re-entry into the world of human density and interaction. The leaders confer, confirming which city gate to approach, which officials they know, what gifts might be expected by the gate guards. Goods that have remained carefully packed for weeks are now readied for inspection and ultimately for sale. Or, as you draw nearer, the magnificent architecture reveals itself in layers. The central citadel rises above everything, its walls massive and imposing. The Registan, the great public square, spreads at its base, framed by madrasas with facades of intricate blue geometric patterns. Minarets pierce the sky like slender fingers reaching toward heaven. Domes of varying sizes create a rhythm across the skyline, their azure tiles capturing and reflecting the harsh Central Asian sun. The engineering required to create such beauty in this unforgiving landscape becomes apparent. Water, that most precious desert resource, has been tamed and directed through a complex system of canals, fountains, reservoirs, and underground channels called qanats. These hydraulic marvels transform what should be a barren outpost into a green oasis where gardens bloom and fountains play. The science of water management here represents knowledge accumulated over centuries passed between civilizations along the very routes your caravan has travelled. Your entry into the city itself is ceremonial and highly regulated. The gates are massive, tall enough for laden camels to pass through without stooping, wide enough for carts, and flanked by guards in colourful uniforms that denote their status and affiliation. The caravan leader presents documents, exchanges formal greetings, and often subtle payments pass from hand to hand. This ritual varies by city and political era, but its essence remains constant, proving your caravan has legitimate business and poses no threat. Once admitted, the sensory assault is overwhelming. After months where sounds consisted of wind, animal noises, and the conversation of a few dozen fellow travellers, you're suddenly immersed in the cacophony of thousands of human lives compressed into narrow streets. After landscapes of muted browns and greys, your eyes struggle to process the explosion of colour. Vivid textiles hanging from balconies, painted doors, glazed tiles in every imaginable shade of blue and turquoise, the rich hues of fruits and vegetables piled in market stalls. The noise hits you first, not just volume but variety. A dozen languages shouted at once, the clang of metal from workshops, animals braying, children laughing, water splashing in fountains, music drifting from tea houses, prayer calls echoing from minarets. After the desert silence, it feels like your ears might bleed. The scents are equally complex, spices you've never encountered, cooking fires, animals, perfumes, human seared bodies, leather being tanned, bread being baked, incense burning in temples. Some travellers find this sensory overload disorienting to the point of physical illness. The veterans of the road know to introduce themselves gradually, often waiting in quieter caravanserais on the outskirts before venturing into the heart of the busy commercial districts. The layout of major Silk Road cities follows patterns dictated by function, defence, religion, and the eternal necessities of commerce. The highest point typically houses the citadel or ark, a fortified complex containing palaces, government buildings, treasuries, and military quarters. Radiating outward from the centre, districts organise themselves by purpose. Religious areas clustered around major mosques, madrasas, or temples. Residential quarters often divided by ethnicity or profession. Specialised market areas for different goods. Industrial zones for potters, metalworkers, tanners, and other craftspeople whose trades produce noise, waste, or odours. The markets form the pulsing heart of any Silk Road city. Unlike the impromptu trading that occurs between caravans at oasis camps, urban bazaars operate with elaborate structures of hierarchy, regulation, and tradition. Each commercial area has its own character. The silk market with its hushed atmosphere and careful handling of precious fabrics. The raucous spice bazaar with its mountains of coloured powders, the livestock market on the city outskirts with its attendant smells and sounds. Bukhara, with its clay buildings the colour of sand, presents a different aspect than blue-domed Samarkand, though it lies just a few days' journey away. The architecture seems to rise organically from the earth itself, walls and buildings flowing into one another in undulating forms. Its ancient citadel, the Ark, has sheltered residents for over 2 millennia, its massive earthen walls bearing witness to conquests, collapses and rebirths that parallel the cycles of the Silk Road itself. The weight of history presses down like a physical force. These walls have watched empires rise and fall. These streets have felt the footsteps of conquerors whose names still echo through time: Alexander, Genghis Khan, Tamerlane. And through it all, the caravans kept coming, the goods kept flowing, the city endured. After weeks or months in the wilderness, the atmosphere of settled life affects travellers profoundly. Many describe a sense of disorientation that transcends physical comfort or discomfort. After a month in the desert, even a simple chair feels like a throne. A real bed? That's paradise. Yet something in you has changed, and these comforts now seem somehow foreign, almost suspicious in their permanence. The markers of civilization you once took for granted now appear as minor miracles. Glazed windows that keep out wind but admit light, doors that lock, floors that remain level, walls that don't move with the wind, water that flows at the turn of a spigot rather than being rationed by the cupful. Food in seemingly endless variety after weeks of dried meat and hard bread. The luxury is almost disorienting, your body struggling to adjust to comfort after adapting so completely to hardship. Further along the Silk Road, Kashgar offers yet another face of urban life. Positioned at the junction where routes from China meet paths leading west towards Central Asia, this crossroads city hums with energy entirely different from the monumental elegance of Samarkand or the ancient solidity of Bukhara. Kashgar's legendary Sunday market isn't just a market, it's a world gathering. Every face, every language, every good imaginable converges in one chaotic, magnificent space. From the moment dawn breaks until the last light fades, the city transforms into a living exhibition of everything the Silk Road connects. This weekly transformation sees the city's population swell by thousands as nomads, farmers, and merchants from outlying regions converge on the trading grounds. The market doesn't just occupy a designated space. It spills through streets, fills squares, climbs the steps of public buildings, and turns ordinary thoroughfares into specialized shopping districts. The organization appears chaotic to outsiders, but follows ancient patterns understood by participants. Livestock dominates the outer rings. Horses, camels, sheep, and goats evaluated with expert eyes by traders whose families have been breeding animals for countless generations. Moving inward, sections specialize with remarkable precision. Tools in one area, textiles in another. Foodstuffs, jewelry, medicinal herbs, and leather goods each claiming their traditional territory. At the market's heart, the most precious commodities, silk, gold, jade, spices, and gemstones, change hands in transactions that might involve multiple currencies, complex credit arrangements, and networks of trust spanning thousands of miles. The most striking aspect of Kashgar's market is not the goods but the people. Here, the full human diversity of the Silk Road displays itself in a living tapestry. Han Chinese merchants in silk robes haggle with Turkic nomads in felt hats. Persian traders converse in the international commercial language of Sogdian with Tibetan yak herders. Uyghur locals move easily between these worlds, many speaking 4 or 5 languages acquired through a lifetime at this crossroads. As your journey continues eastward, the cities gradually transform, reflecting Chinese influence more strongly. Chang'an, modern Xi'an, the eastern terminus of the Silk Road, represents the culmination of this progression, a city of staggering scale and imperial organization that makes even Samarkand seem modest by comparison. The scale itself feels impossible. Streets wide enough for 8 horses to ride abreast, city walls that take half a day to walk around, markets where 100,000 people might gather. After the intimate chaos of Central Asian cities, the geometric precision of Chang'an feels both impressive and somewhat intimidating. The Tang dynasty capital operates on principles of cosmic order and imperial hierarchy. Its layout follows a rigid grid oriented to the cardinal directions, with the imperial palace complex anchoring the northern end of the central axis. This mathematical precision extends to every aspect of urban planning: the width of streets, the height of walls, the placement of gates, all governed by the regulations that reflect philosophical beliefs about proper cosmic alignment. For travellers who have journeyed from the Islamic West, the cultural shock of entering the Chinese sphere is profound. The differences manifest in every aspect of daily life, from dining customs and food preparation to social hierarchies, religious practices, architectural styles, and artistic sensibilities. Everything is different here. The way people eat, dress, speak, even how they look at you. You're not just a foreigner, you're from another world entirely. This disorientation affects even the most experienced Silk Road travellers. Customs that seemed universal in the western segments of the route, greeting rituals, business practices, gender roles, religious observances, suddenly require complete recalibration. The writing system, based on characters rather than alphabets, renders even the simplest signs indecipherable to Western merchants. Foods feature unfamiliar ingredients prepared with techniques you've never seen. The very rhythm of daily life, when people wake, work, eat and sleep, follows patterns guided by different traditions. Yet beneath these differences, certain commonalities persist across all Silk Road cities. The most universal is the specialized accommodation for traveling merchants, the caravanserais and fonduks that serve as combination hotel, warehouse, trading floors, and information exchange. Every major city maintains these facilities, often with separate establishments for the merchants of different origins. These institutions provide crucial services for caravans, secure storage for goods, translation services, currency exchange, animal care, vehicle repair, and connections to local markets. Urban dangers differ significantly from the natural threats of the road. Instead of sandstorms and mountain passes, travellers must navigate complex social hierarchies, legal systems they don't fully understand, and sophisticated criminal enterprises. Thieves operate with greater subtlety in cities, employing diversionary tactics, confidence schemes, and inside information, rather than the straightforward banditry of rural areas. Authorities extract their share through official taxes and unofficial expediting payments, while market overseers enforce rules that often favour local merchants over foreigners. In the desert, danger announces itself with dust on the horizon or the howl of wolves. In the city, it smiles while pouring your tea, compliments your goods while calculating how to relieve you of them, and presents documents requiring payment for regulations that didn't exist yesterday. Finding lodging in Silk Road cities presents challenges beyond simple availability. While caravanserais provide basic accommodation for merchants with legitimate goods, their security measures can feel restrictive. Gates locked at night, guards monitoring all movement, restrictions on visitors. Wealthier travellers might seek private residences or higher-end establishments, but these bring their own complications of cultural expectation and social obligation. The poorest members of caravans often sleep in their workspaces, in stables alongside their animals, or in rudimentary shelters in the city's less reputable districts. The diversity of population in major Silk Road cities exceeds anything found in most other urban centres of the pre-modern world. Permanent foreign quarters develop in cities like Samarkand and Chang'an, where communities from distant lands maintain their cultural practices while slowly absorbing local influences. Religious buildings reflect this pluralism. Buddhist temples, Zoroastrian fire altars, Nestorian Christian churches, Jewish synagogues, and Islamic mosques might all operate within the same city walls, their adherents engaged in both competition and coexistence. In one street you might hear 10 languages, smell foods you can't name, and see faces from lands you didn't know existed. This diversity creates environments where knowledge transfers with extraordinary speed. Medical techniques, mathematical concepts, astronomical observations, and technological innovations move between cultures with the same fluidity as trade goods. The cosmopolitan nature of these cities accelerates cultural evolution, as ideas cross-pollinate in ways impossible in more homogeneous societies. A Persian astronomical instrument might be improved by Chinese metallurgical techniques, then applied to navigation problems by Arab mathematicians, all within the same urban environment. For the Silk Road traveller, cities represent both culmination and interruption of the journey. They are destinations in themselves, places where goods are sold, fortunes made or lost, reputations established or ruined. Yet they also serve as pauses in the larger journey, opportunities to rest, regroup and prepare for the next segment of travel. The rhythm of the Silk Road alternates between the extended hardships of the route and these islands of civilization, each changing the traveller in different ways. As your caravan prepares to depart from the comfort of the city back into the wilderness of the route, you notice how differently you now perceive both environments. The city, once the epitome of civilization in your mind, now seems in some ways confining, its comforts undermined by complications that don't exist on the open road. Yet the challenges ahead, mountains, deserts, rivers, no longer appear as insurmountable as they once did. You have been transformed by both experiences, becoming neither fully a person of settled life nor entirely a creature of the road, but something in between, a true Silk Road traveller at home in the space that connects worlds. After weeks traversing the merciless Taklamakan or surviving the knife-edge paths of the Pamirs, you see it rising from the dusty horizon like a promise. Square walls, solid and unmoving against the shifting landscape. The caravanserai, not a hotel as you know it. This is fortress, marketplace and sanctuary all at once. The sight of it pulls your weary bones forward with renewed energy, even as your camel senses water and quickens its pace without prompting. The structure looms larger as you approach, mud, brick or stone depending on the region, weathered by wind and sun, yet standing defiant against time and elements. Its walls rise 20 feet or more, designed not for beauty but survival. Small windows like suspicious eyes peer outward, too high for the raiders to reach, too narrow for arrows to find their mark. A single massive gate stands as the only entrance, wide enough for laden camels but easily defended by a handful of guards. The gatekeeper watches your approach with the impassive gaze of a man who has seen every type of traveller cross his threshold. He notes your caravan size, the nature of your goods, perhaps the accent in your greeting. The gate's massive wooden doors, often metal reinforced and scorched by past attempts to burn them, swing open with a groan that speaks of ancient hinges and constant vigilance. You enter what feels like a small city contained within four walls. The central courtyard stretches before you, an open square where life pulses with activity despite the shelter from the outside world. The contrast from wilderness to this hive of humanity strikes you like a physical blow after so many days with only your caravan companions. The courtyard follows a pattern as old as the Silk Road itself. Around the perimeter runs a raised platform shaded by the interior wall, where merchants display goods, conduct business, or simply rest their trail-weary bodies. "Get your animals settled before nightfall," barks the caravan leader. Though you've been through this ritual before, the courtyard centre belongs to the animals. Camels kneeling and grumbling as they're unloaded, horses led to troughs, donkeys braying in reunion with others of their kind. The air fills with dust, dung, and the sweat of beasts who've carried civilization's wealth across the most inhospitable landscapes on Earth. Grooms and stable hands, often boys hoping to earn enough to one day join a caravan, weave through the chaos with practiced efficiency. While the animals are attended to, you secure lodging. The rooms line the interior walls, simple cells opening onto the courtyard or reached by narrow staircases to upper levels. They are small, sparse, often windowless. A raised sleeping platform of packed earth or stone, perhaps a niche for a lamp, maybe a hook on the wall for hanging goods too valuable to leave below. Luxury is not the point. Security is. 3 copper coins for the night, demands the caravanserai keeper, his face creased from decades in the sun, his shrewd eyes missing nothing. 5, if you want clean bedding. The price varies wildly from one caravanserai to another. Some are controlled by local rulers and serve as tax collection points as much as way stations. Others are maintained by religious endowments as acts of charity and mercy to travellers. The cheapest option is to sleep in the courtyard among the animals and goods, but only the desperately poor or foolish choose that. Stories of throat-slitting thieves keep most travellers scrambling for even the humblest room. You never know if the man sleeping beside you is a merchant, a missionary or a murderer. Perhaps all three. The walls between rooms are often thin enough to hear snoring, arguments, whispered prayers, and occasionally the rhythmic sounds of those seeking comfort in another's arms. Privacy is a concept that exists only in memory on the Silk Road. As evening approaches, the true character of the caravanserai reveals itself. The courtyard transforms into a marketplace in miniature. Travellers from caravans that arrived earlier have already set up informal displays of goods they're willing to trade or sell. A Persian with rugs unfurled across the stone floor. A Chinese merchant with small packets of tea leaves. A man from the steppes offering dried mare's milk and leather goods. All looking to lighten their loads, make intermediate profits, or acquire something needed for the journey ahead. Locals from nearby settlements arrive, slipping through the gate before it closes for the night. They bring fresh produce, meat, bread, luxuries to road-weary palates accustomed to dried provisions. They also bring news, gossip, and the simple curiosity about strangers that seems universal across all cultures. The caravanserai becomes a temporary village, with the distinct characteristic that almost everyone is from somewhere else. 4 days west of here, you overhear a merchant telling attentive listeners, the Khan's soldiers are stopping every caravan, searching everything, taking 1/10 of all silk. Another traveller contradicts him. Passed through there last week. No soldiers, but bandits hit 3 caravans in the mountain pass. Who speaks truth? Who passes rumours? Who deliberately spreads misinformation to discourage competition? In the caravanserai, information is currency, sometimes more valuable than silver. Smoke rises from cooking fires as the sun sets, and with it comes the mingled aromas that tell the story of the Silk Road more eloquently than any map. Cumin and cardamom from Indian travellers, star anise and ginger from Chinese merchants, saffron and mint from Persian traders, garlic and onions that seem common to every culture. The meals prepared in a caravanserai are as diverse as those cooking them, some elaborate multi-course affairs for wealthy merchants, others simple flatbread and dried meat for those with fewer resources. The caravanserai provides services beyond shelter. In the larger ones, you might find a bathhouse where, for a fee, you can wash away weeks of road dust in steaming water. The luxury of being truly clean again feels almost sacred after so long. Barbers offer to trim beards and cut hair. Medicine sellers peddle remedies for everything from saddle sores to desert fever. Some caravanserais maintain a blacksmith to repair metal goods, harnesses, weapons or shoe horses. Others host scribes who, for a fee, will write letters home for the illiterate or draft contracts between merchants. Within these walls, fortunes are made, secrets exchanged, and alliances form that will shape empires. All while you sleep on a thin mat surrounded by strangers. The caravanserai is where deals too complex to conclude during brief roadside meetings can be finalised. It's where goods are repacked, sorted, and assessed for the next leg of the journey. It's where religion spread as monks, imams, and priests find captive audiences eager for spiritual comfort after facing death in the desert. It's where languages mingle and evolve, creating the pidgins and trade tongues that allow commerce to function across cultural divides. As night fully descends, the massive gates are sealed with heavy wooden beams. The night guards take their positions. Within the walls, lanterns and fires create pools of light where smaller groups gather. Some seek entertainment, music from strange instruments, stories from far-off lands, games of chance or skill that require little shared language to enjoy. Laughter needs no translation, and the universality of human expression bridges gaps that words cannot. Sleep comes in waves through the caravanserai. Some retire early, exhausted from the road. Others stay awake deep into the night, talking, trading, or watching the stars from the roof. The night sounds here differ from the open desert or mountain passes. No wolves howl, no shifting sand whispers, no wind moans through rocky defiles. Instead, there's the symphony of humanity, coughing, snoring, whispering, praying, occasional arguments or bursts of laughter, the cries of infants travelling with families, the periodic braying of a restless donkey. Morning arrives with first light. The caravanserai stirs awake like a living organism. Those continuing their journey rise early, packing belongings, checking animals, securing loads. Those staying longer move more slowly, savouring the relative comfort of a day without travel. The gates open with the same ancient groan as they closed, and caravans depart into the growing light. By mid-morning, new travellers arrive, and the cycle begins again, an endless rhythm that has continued for centuries. Not all caravanserais are equal. Some are grand structures, built by wealthy rulers to demonstrate power and ensure commerce flows through their territories. These might feature ornate decorated gateways, separate quarters for noble travellers, even small mosques or temples within their walls. Others are humble outposts on remote stretches, little more than a protective wall around a well, offering the minimum needed to survive another night. Some of these structures are spaced almost precisely one day's journey apart, forming a chain of safety across otherwise impenetrable terrain. Others stand in isolation where geography dictates. An oasis in the desert, a plateau before a mountain ascent, the edge of a particularly dangerous region. A few grow into permanent settlements, then towns, then cities as the temporary becomes fixed and patterns of commerce create permanence from transience. The most powerful sensation upon leaving a caravanserai is the contrast, from community back to isolation, from relative safety to imminent danger, from the cacophony of humanity to the vast silence of the wilderness. After the crowded intensity of the caravanserai, Even your familiar caravan companions seem sparse and insufficient against the enormity of the landscape. As the square structure recedes behind you, becoming a diminishing speck on the horizon, you already find yourself calculating the days until the next one. Yet something of the caravanserai travels with you. Snippets of information gleaned from fellow travellers, new foods tasted, stories heard, perhaps even friendships formed. Like the Taklamakan sands that get into everything you own, the caravanserai experience filters into your understanding of the world. You carry each one with you, a growing mental map of sanctuary across a hostile world. And in each one you left something behind as well, words spoken, goods traded, perhaps a carving on a wooden beam to mark your passage. For these are not just places to rest. They are the knots that tie the silk threads of the road together, the places where individual journeys briefly become a collective human story. Section 7, Trade and Exchange. Morning light streams through the caravanserai gate as you prepare to continue your journey. But before you leave, there is business to conduct. The true purpose of your travels waits for no comfort. Trade is why you've risked everything, crossed mountains and deserts, slept among strangers. It's why the Silk Road exists at all. And here, in this temporary crossroads of humanity, you'll discover that exchange is far more than the simple swapping of goods. It's a dance of cultures, a negotiation of worlds. The items you carry represent your investment, your family's future, your very purpose on this treacherous path. Perhaps you left Chang'an with rolls of silk so fine they can pass through a wedding ring, each worth a farmer's yearly income. Or maybe you departed Damascus with glassware that catches light like liquid gems, technologies unknown in the East. Southern traders bring spices that transform bland sustenance into revelations: pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves. From the steppes come furs so soft they make kings feel divine. From Persia, carpets containing months of labour in every square inch. But the real miracle isn't the goods themselves, it's their transformation as they travel. A simple block of salt worthless in one land, worth its weight in silver in another. Patterned silk designed for Chinese nobility becomes church vestments in distant cathedrals. A trading chain stretches thousands of miles, each merchant rarely travelling more than a segment before selling to the next. Each exchange increasing the value, each transition adding to the mystique and price. 2 bolts of this blue silk for your 5 glass vessels, you offer to a merchant you met last night by the fire. His eyes, Damascus green, narrow slightly as he examines your wares. His fingers, stained with the indigo he trades, run across the silk with practiced precision. You can almost see the calculations behind his eyes, what he can sell this for in Baghdad, what profit margin he needs to justify the risk of breakage for his glass. There is no fixed price here. Everything is negotiable, everything is relative. The ritual of barter transcends language. When words fail, fingers take over, extended to indicate numbers, clasped to show agreement, waved to reject. You've learned to speak with your hands, your eyes, your posture. A shrug here, a nod there. Merchants develop an unspoken language all their own. You demonstrate quality by holding silk up to the light, revealing its tight weave and perfect consistency. He responds by tapping his glass with a fingernail, producing a clear ring that speaks of craftsmanship. Trust forms the invisible backbone of trade, more precious than gold, more necessary than language. You might not speak this man's tongue, but you read the symbols of reliability. His goods are well packed, his animals well kept. Other merchants greet him with respect. Perhaps you've heard his name before, mentioned it in a caravanserai 3 months back. In a world without contracts or courts to enforce them, reputation is currency. The silk is good, he finally says in broken Sogdian, a trade language. Neither of you were born speaking, but not worth 5 vessels. 3, perhaps? And so begins the delicate dance. You look disappointed, though you expected this opening move. You counter. He sighs dramatically. You remind him of the dangers you faced bringing such fine material this far. He mentions the fragility of glass, the backbreaking care required to transport it intact. Around you in the caravanserai courtyard, dozens similar negotiations unfold. A Turkic nomad trades horses for tea bricks so compressed they serve as currency throughout the steppes. A Buddhist monk forbidden to handle money exchanges copied sutras for food and safe passage with the next caravan heading east. An Indian trader argues animatedly over the purity of his indigo dye. Some deals conclude with solemn handshakes, others with embraces, still others with ceremonial sharing of food or tea to seal the bond. The complexity deepens when actual currency enters the equation. Money along the Silk Road is a maze of competing systems. Chinese copper coins with square holes, strung together in varying amounts, Sassanid silver drachms, Byzantine gold solidi, cowrie shells, commodity currencies like tea bricks or salt bars. Each has its own purity, weight, and acceptance range. Some are valued by count, others must be weighed on small scales that merchants carry, checking for shaved edges or debased metal. "I will take 4 glass vessels for the silk plus 6 silver coins," you counter, adjusting your strategy. The merchant's eyes light up at the mention of silver, a universal value more easily transported than glass. But which silver? What weight? What purity? He pulls out a small touchstone and streaks the coins across it, then applies a liquid that determines silver content through colour change. Old coins are often more trusted than new ones. Everyone knows which ancient rulers debased their currency and which maintained standards. Value flows not just in objects but in weight and measurement systems that rarely align. Your bolt of silk measured in Chinese qi must be converted to Persian units when trading. The merchant's glass is priced by piece, but its value lies in the weight of raw materials and the skill of craftsmen who shaped it. You've learnt to carry small weights in your belt pouch, to convert between systems in your head, to recognise when someone attempts to use a non-standard measuring cup or balance. 3 vessels and 8 coins from the old Sasanian mint, not the new ones, he counters. And I'll include a small jar of rosewater from Damascus. Your wife will never have smelled anything so sweet. The mention of your family strikes home. What good is profit if not to bring joy to those you love? The addition of an unexpected item, a gift above the negotiation, signals his desire to conclude favourably. It's a gesture acknowledging that trade is human, not merely mathematical. Behind these individual exchanges lies a complex web of intermediaries. At major trading hubs like Samarkand or Bukhara, agents maintain permanent outposts, buying and warehousing goods until prices or seasons favour movement. Money changers set up tables with piles of various currencies, taking their percentage from every transaction. Brokers who speak multiple languages make their living connecting buyers with sellers across cultural divides, taking commission from both sides. Some of the wealthiest traders never touch merchandise at all. They deal in information, credit, and trade finance. A merchant in Chang'an can, through a complex network of trusted associates, arrange for goods to be purchased in Damascus without silver ever physically crossing the dangerous roads. This early form of banking operates on honour, family connections, and the understanding that the system only works when debts are paid. Letters of credit written in Persian, Chinese, or Arabic authorise bearers to collect payment thousands of miles from where goods were purchased. As your negotiation nears conclusion, both you and the glass merchant make small concessions, the timeless rhythm of finding middle ground. He allows you to select your preferred vessels from his collection. You show flexibility on which silk patterns you'll trade. When finally you reach agreement, the relief is palpable. The transaction concludes with a ritual appropriate to the scale of exchange. Perhaps sharing tea, perhaps making marks on parchment and as a memory aid, perhaps simply a firm clasp of hands. Some return with enough wealth to buy a palace. Others lose everything on a single bad deal or a merchant's lie. You've seen both in your travels, the silk trader who bet his entire inventory on musk, only to have it spoil in the desert heat. The glass merchant who arrived with shattered wares after a mountain crossing. The shrewd Armenian who began with a single mule load of wool and parlayed it into a fortune in silver through 20 clever exchanges. The success stories are celebrated in caravanserais, the failures serve as warnings. You've learned the invisible red threads that connect seemingly unrelated events across vast distances. Drought in the steppes means fewer horses reaching markets, raising prices for all transport. A new emperor in China restricting silk exports creates opportunity for smugglers, but risks capital punishment. Religious conflicts closing certain routes forces caravans to find alternatives, bringing unexpected prosperity to formerly isolated towns. The Silk Road is not just a path, it's a living economic organism that responds to pressures thousands of miles away. Smuggling flourishes alongside legitimate trade. Silkworms smuggled to Daiso, Byzantium in hollow walking sticks, by monks who noticed the insects during their spiritual journeys. Technologies copied despite imperial prohibitions. Maps memorized rather than drawn to circumvent bans on geographical knowledge. goods hidden in secret compartments to avoid taxes or religious restrictions, caravans timing their arrivals at certain checkpoints for when the least zealous officials are on duty. For you began this journey as a novice, watching wide-eyed as experienced merchants conducted transactions that seemed like magic. Now you too understand the unspoken language of trade. You've learned to maintain multiple ledgers, one recording actual deals, another showing officials a version that minimizes tax burden. You know which goods should be displayed openly to attract interest and which revealed only to serious buyers. You recognize the subtle signs that differentiate honest negotiators from those who will vanish by morning with your payment. Beneath every transaction lies psychology deeper than mere profit calculation. There is pride when someone recognizes the superior quality of your goods, satisfaction in driving a favorable bargain, anxiety when investing everything in new merchandise for the return journey, fear when carrying too much wealth in a dangerous region. The emotional weight of knowing that success means generations of your family will prosper, while failure means returning in shame, if you return at all. As the glass is carefully packed among your goods and the silk changes hands, you feel the momentary weightlessness that comes with transformation. What was fabric is now glass plus silver. What was merely valuable has become portable, divisible wealth that can transform again into other opportunities. The silk has moved one step westward on its journey from worm to emperor. The glass travels east, where it may eventually grace the table of someone who has never imagined its origins. This moment of exchange, this dance of value, culture and human connection, is the true heartbeat of the Silk Road. The dangerous paths, the harsh landscapes, the caravanserais with their temporary communities, all exist to serve this essential function. Not merely the movement of objects from one place to another, but the creation of value through movement itself. This is what drives men and women to risk everything to endure separation and danger. The chance to participate in the greatest exchange network the world has ever known, where every successful transaction writes your name, however small, into the invisible ledger of history. The successful trade negotiation leaves you with the new goods, a lighter load of silk, and a pocket heavier with silver coins. As you secure your treasures within your baggage, the merchant you've just bartered with leans closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Take the northern pass," he murmurs, eyes flicking toward the mountains visible beyond the caravanserai walls. 3 caravans hit on the main route this month. They appear on the horizon like predatory birds, swift and merciless. You nod, grateful for the information yet aware it could be false, meant to delay a competitor while the informant's associates take the better route. On the Silk Road, even warnings might be traps. Every piece of intelligence must be weighed, assessed, compared against other sources. The caravan leader will make the final decision, but you'll share this tidbit at tonight's council. Information about dangers ahead is a currency as valuable as the silver now hidden in your belt. Bandits are the most immediate threat to any caravan. They know the routes as intimately as any guide, but their knowledge serves predation rather than passage. Some are local tribesmen supplementing meagre resources by raiding the wealthy caravans that cross their ancestral lands. Others are organised gangs who've made robbery their profession, complete with scouts, informants in towns, and arrangements with corrupt officials who look the other way for a percentage. Their tactics are as varied as the terrain. In narrow mountain passes, they need only block the path ahead and behind to trap a caravan between sheer cliffs. In open desert, they rely on superior horsemanship. Appearing suddenly from behind dunes or distant ridges, galloping in tight formation, their dust cloud often the first warning of approach. Some prefer the cover of darkness, sliding into camp to cut purses and slash packs before vanishing. Others employ overwhelming force in daylight, counting on merchants valuing their lives above their goods. Defense requires constant vigilance. The caravan's outriders scan the horizon continuously, alert for dust clouds, reflected sunlight off metal, or birds suddenly taking flight, all potential signs of human movement. At night, guards rotate in shifts, walking the perimeter of the camp, listening for sounds that don't belong to the desert or mountains. The strongest protection, however, comes from numbers. Large caravans hire professional guards, former soldiers, nomadic warriors, or local men who know every fold of the landscape. These men carry composite bows, curved swords, and the hard-earned knowledge of how to use them. "We lost everything 3 years ago," a merchant from Bukhara tells you one evening as your caravan makes camp in the shadow of eroded cliffs. 30 of them came from those same rocks just before sunset. Our guards fought, but they were outnumbered. His voice remains matter-of-fact, but his eyes hold the hollow look of a man who has seen violence up close. They took the silk, the silver, even our water, left us to walk 3 days to the nearest well. 7 didn't make it. He stares into the fire. I started again with borrowed money. What else can we do? The road is our life. But human predators, for all their danger, are at least comprehensible. Far more insidious are the microscopic threats that travel with the caravans, invisible enemies against which swords and numbers offer no protection. Sickness travels with the caravans. A cough in Bukhara becomes a fever in Samarkand, then a deathbed in Kashgar. The Silk Road doesn't just transport goods, it creates highways for disease, connecting populations that would otherwise remain isolated, sharing not just culture but contagion. You've seen it happen. A child sniffling in one caravanserai, a merchant complaining of aches at the next stop. By the third night, half the caravan burns with fever, their water supplies dwindling as thirst grips them. The healthy must care for the sick while still moving forward. Stopping too long in the wilderness means death for everyone. Some caravans designate a wagon or string of camels just for those too ill to ride independently. Others make harder choices, leaving the gravely ill at the next settlement with money for care, knowing they'll likely never see them again. Folk remedies and medical knowledge travel alongside the diseases they combat. A Chinese physician offers acupuncture and herbal decoctions. A Greek trader dispenses theories of humoral balance. A Persian healer recommends specific foods to counter specific ailments. A shaman from the steppes performs rituals involving smoke and chanting. All are tried in desperate rotation when fever sweeps through a caravan. Sometimes recovery follows, though, whether because of or despite the treatment, no one can say. You carry your own precautions, a sachet of dried herbs whose bitter tea has kept you healthy so far, a ritual of washing hands before eating that some companions mock as superstition. You've learned to judge water sources carefully, to avoid meat that smells even slightly off, to sleep away from others when coughing spreads through camp. Still, you know, it's partly luck. The robust young guard who boasted of never being sick now lies wrapped in burial cloths, while the frail old merchant somehow survives each contagion. Beyond the twin spectres of violence and disease lies another danger, less dramatic but equally lethal, the political landscapes through which you travel. The Silk Road traverses empires, kingdoms, tribal territories, and disputed borderlands. Each has its own rulers, laws, tariffs, and attitudes toward foreign merchants. A route safe one season might be closed by war the next. A city that welcomed traders last year might now have a new ruler who views outsiders with suspicion. Papers! The checkpoint appeared without warning, a hastily constructed wooden barrier across the road manned by soldiers wearing insignia you don't recognize. The caravan grinds to a halt as the leader rides forward to negotiate. You and the other merchants exchange glances, calculating what bribes might be expected, what documentation might be demanded. Political changes sweep across these lands as randomly as sandstorms, leaving travelers scrambling to understand new realities. Savvy merchants carry multiple travel documents with official seals, letters of introduction from respected figures, and religious symbols that can be displayed or hidden depending on whose territory they cross. They memorize appropriate greetings and gestures of respect for different authorities. They maintain a mental map of which rulers are at war, which are collecting excessive taxes, which might seize goods from certain origins. The caravan leader keeps a special chest of gifts suitable for presenting to local officials, small luxuries that oil the wheels of passage without appearing as outright bribes. The weather itself becomes a political entity when it turns against you. Flash floods transform dry riverbeds into deadly torrents within minutes, washing away unlucky travellers who chose the wrong place to camp. Blizzards in mountain passes can trap caravans for days, forcing the consumption of carefully rationed supplies. Droughts dry up expected water sources, turning route planning into desperate gambles. A dust storm can separate companions forever, obscuring vision beyond arm's length and making every step a journey into blindness. "We make camp here," the caravan leader announces one afternoon, though the sun still rides high. You notice his eyes fixed on the northern horizon, where clouds pile like dark wool above distant mountains. Others grumble about the early stop, but you've travelled long enough to read the signs, the sudden drop in temperature, the unnatural stillness of the air, the way animals grow restless. By nightfall, wind screams across the plains, driving sand that would have scoured skin from bone had you been caught in the open. The caravan hunkers down, people and animals press together behind whatever windbreaks can be fashioned, and waits for the earth's fury to pass. The animal threats seem almost mundane by comparison, though no less deadly when encountered. Wolves follow caravans through certain regions, picking off stragglers or attacking during storms when organisation falters. In desert regions, scorpions and snakes claim unwary sleepers who fail to check their bedding. Bears in mountain forests investigate camps for food, sometimes with violent results. Even insects carry outsized danger. Mosquitoes bearing fever, flies contaminating food, spiders whose venom can kill within hours. You've learned precautions, sleeping on raised platforms when possible, keeping fires burning through the night in predator territory, shaking out boots before putting them on, carrying antivenom among your medical supplies. The most experienced travellers develop a sixth sense, an awareness of which watering holes predators frequent, which valley bottoms flash floods prefer, which rock formations provide adequate shelter from electrical storms. Then there are the accidents that need no enemy, human or animal, to claim lives. A misstep on a mountain path sends both rider and horse tumbling into a ravine. A camel stumbles, crushing the handler walking alongside. A cooking fire catches tent fabric, creating an inferno that spreads through camp in seconds. A water skin tears, spilling precious liquid into sand hours away from the next well. The wagon axle breaks in the middle of bandit territory. These prosaic disasters kill as surely as any blade or disease, and they strike without warning or logic. Lost 3 good men last spring, a merchant tells you as your camels navigate a treacherous slope above a gorge so deep its bottom disappears in shadow. Not to bandits or fever, just a rock slide. Wrong place, wrong moment. He shrugs with the fatalism common to all who travel these roads. Could happen again right now, or not for 100 years. The mountain decides. This essential unpredictability shapes every traveller's psychology. You learn to live alongside death without surrendering to it, to take reasonable precautions without succumbing to paralysis, to accept that survival involves skill, preparation, good companions, and blind luck. The recognition creates a curious freedom, an intensity to each moment that those living safer lives might never experience. When nothing is guaranteed, everything becomes precious. Alongside these tangible threats move more subtle dangers, those that target not the body but the mind and spirit. Homesickness strikes even the most hardened travellers, sometimes manifesting as physical symptoms as debilitating as any fever. The sheer alienation of foreign lands, where every custom, food, and facial feature differs from home, creates psychological strain that accumulates like physical fatigue. Making decisions in languages you barely speak, constantly calculating who can be trusted, maintaining vigilance against multiple threats, all tax mental resources already stretched by the physical demands of the journey. There's a valley where the winds whisper your darkest thoughts until you walk willingly off the cliff edge. An old guide tells wide-eyed novices around a campfire. The story might be mere legend, but it contains psychological truth. The isolation, hardship, and constant stress of the road do sometimes break minds. You've seen it, the merchant who suddenly abandons valuable goods and walks into the desert. The formerly gregarious traveller who falls into silence so complete it seems like another language. The rational man who becomes convinced invisible spirits are stalking the caravan. Trust issues plague every relationship on the road. The merchant who shared your fire last night, is he noting the location of your valuables? The guide who promises safe passage, is he in league with bandits? The caravan leader making route decisions, does he have interests that conflict with yours? The official stamping your papers, is the document real or counterfeit? Constant vigilance exhausts the spirit as surely as mountain climbing exhausts the body. Yet within this web of dangers, travellers find unexpected gifts. Shared threat creates bonds stronger than family between former strangers. Problem-solving in the face of disaster reveals capabilities you never knew you possessed. The contrast between moments of peace and periods of danger heightens appreciation for simple pleasures. A cup of clean water, a night without alarm, a patch of shade in burning heat. You discover resilience beyond what settled life would ever have revealed. This is the final paradox of the Silk Road's dangers. They are both obstacle and gateway, both barrier and teacher. They kill without mercy, yet they transform those who survive. You're not the same person who left home seasons ago. Your eyes now scan every horizon automatically. Your ears catalogue sounds without conscious thought. Your mind calculates risks and advantages in multiple dimensions. You've been stripped to essentials and rebuilt by necessity. As your caravan prepares to depart the caravanserai, newly armed with warnings about bandits ahead, you check your weapons, your water supply, your emergency provisions. You secure your trade goods and newly acquired silver with practiced hands. The dangers ahead are real, numerous, and potentially lethal. Yet you move toward them deliberately, eyes open, mind clear. Not because you are fearless, but because you have learned the road's most important lesson. Fear is just another country to pass through, another territory to negotiate, another region to survive before reaching the next destination. You've survived the night in the caravanserai, where stone walls kept bandits at bay and fellow travellers shared warnings of the road ahead. Your goods remained secure, your currency exchanged, your body rested despite the hard bed and communal snoring. But as you prepare to continue your journey, you realise something has changed within you. Something less tangible than silver coins or silk bolts, but perhaps more valuable. For along these ancient roads, the most profound cargo isn't carried in saddlebags or wagon beds, but in minds and hearts. Cultural exchange along the Silk Road wasn't a deliberate act so much as an inevitable consequence of human contact. It happened in whispered conversations over evening fires, in the practiced movements of foreign prayers observed from a respectful distance, in the sharing of remedies when fever struck a stranger. You didn't set out to become a vessel for ideas, but that's precisely what you've become. Each traveller carries more than goods. They transport worldviews, beliefs and innovations across otherwise insurmountable boundaries. Religion travelled these roads as surely as any merchant, moving not in caravans but in the convictions of its adherents. Buddhism crept eastward from India, transforming as it went, splintering into schools and interpretations that reflected the cultures it encountered. In caravanserais and market towns, monks with shaved heads and saffron robes became familiar sights, their sutras chanted in the cool mornings before heat made travel impossible. Some carried small statues of the Buddha, foreheads worn smooth from countless reverent touches, these humble objects more revolutionary than any sword. A farmer in Chang'an, your fellow traveller tells you one evening, placed his household gods with a bronze Buddha last year. Now half the village has done the same. You nod, remembering how your own hometown has seen 3 new temples built to foreign deities in your lifetime. Meanwhile, Nestorian Christianity pushed eastward, its priests distinguishable by wooden crosses and distinctive hats. Rejected as heretical in the Byzantine Empire, these Christians found new audiences in Central Asia and China, their monotheistic message resonating with some, puzzling others. Their churches appeared in trading hubs, modest structures where travellers could worship far from home. Many a merchant returned to Damascus or Alexandria with troubling questions about the faith they had once accepted without thought. Islam followed these same paths after the 7th century, carried by merchants as much as missionaries. Unlike the quiet persuasion of Buddhist monks or the theological debates of Christian priests, Islam brought with it a comprehensive social system, rules for trade, inheritance, and community organisation that appealed to towns where commerce was central. Prayer rugs appeared in caravans, unrolled 5 times daily facing Mecca, the rhythmic prostrations becoming as familiar along the route as the loading and unloading of camels. Zoroastrians with their sacred fires, Jews with their scrolled texts, Manichaeans with their dualistic cosmos, all moved along these routes, sometimes as refugees, sometimes as merchants, always as carriers of ideas. You might begin your journey devoted to one faith and end it questioning or incorporating new elements, or converting entirely. The traveller's mind, like the traveller's body, rarely returns unchanged. Languages collide at crossroads, creating not just barriers but bridges. Sogdian traders developed a specialized commercial vocabulary that borrowed from Persian, Chinese, and Turkic tongues. In the busiest market towns, children grew up multilingual by necessity, switching idioms as easily as changing clothes. Listen carefully in any caravanserai at dusk, and you'll hear a dozen languages in animated negotiation, punctuated by laughter that needs no translation. Written languages travelled too, carrying with them new ways of recording and remembering. Paper, that Chinese innovation, moved westward along with the techniques for its production, gradually replacing expensive parchment and unwieldy clay tablets. With it came brushes, inks, and eventually block printing. A technology born in one culture transformed record-keeping in a dozen others, accelerating the exchange of the knowledge across vast distances. Before I left home, a weathered Persian tells you while warming his hands at the communal fire, I taught my son to write our accounts in the Chinese method. Now he keeps better records than any merchant in our town." You notice the man's fingers are stained with ink, the mark of literacy in any language. Mathematics transcended linguistic boundaries, numerals and formulas proving useful regardless of one's mother tongue. Indian mathematical concepts travelled to the Islamic world where scholars developed algebra and advanced astronomical calculations. These in turn moved both east and west, transforming commerce, architecture and navigation. The concept of zero, that profound nothing that changes everything, journeyed from India through the Islamic world to revolutionize calculation everywhere it went. Medicine flowed along these same routes, not just as theoretical knowledge, but as practical response to the diseases that likewise travelled the road. Chinese acupuncture, Indian Ayurvedic treatments, Persian herbal remedies, and Greek humoral theory met and mingled. Doctors from different traditions observed each other's methods, sometimes skeptically, sometimes with revelation. Many a caravan master survived because a foreign physician knew a treatment unknown in his homeland. You've seen this yourself, a Bactrian trader with a festering wound saved by a Chinese traveller's mouldy bread poultice, a technique unheard of in the Western lands. My grandfather would call it witchcraft, the Bactrian later confessed, but I call it a miracle. His arm bears a scar rather than an absence. Art styles crossed borders as readily as the artists themselves. Chinese motifs appeared on Persian ceramics, Greek-influenced Buddha statues emerged from Gandharan workshops, Islamic geometric patterns adorned textiles bound for European markets. No aesthetic remained pure. All were enriched by outside influences. The finest craftsmen didn't resist these foreign elements, but incorporated them, creating new forms that spoke of cosmic connectedness. Music carried cultural DNA in its rhythms and melodies. Instruments travelled in merchants' baggage. Persian lutes making their way to China, Chinese zithers appearing in Central Asian courts. With them came playing techniques, scales, and compositional forms. In market squares, foreign musicians drew crowds with exotic sounds, teaching local musicians new possibilities. You've witnessed impromptu evening performances where musicians who share no common language nonetheless create harmony together, their instruments in conversation when words fail. Even food, that most essential cultural artifacts, transformed as it moved along the Silk Road. Crops unknown in one region became staples in another. Peaches from China, pistachios from Persia, cucumber from India. Cooking techniques migrated alongside spices. The dumpling appeared in dozens of culinary traditions, each adapting the form to local tastes. To eat in a caravanserai kitchen was to taste geography itself, each flavour carrying the memory of distant lands. My grandmother would not recognise what I now call food, laughs a merchant from Kashgar as he shares dried apricots from his hometown, but she would approve of the strength it gives me. You notice how his offering combines the hospitality of the East with the practical nutrition needed for the journey ahead. Perhaps the most profound exchanges were the stories shared around evening fires. Tales from the Panchatantra, Aesop's fables, Sufi parables, and Chinese court legends all travelled with their tellers, morphing with each retelling to reflect local concerns. Heroes gained new weapons, villains took on features of local fears, but the core human truth has remained. These narratives became the invisible merchandise of the Silk Road, more enduring than any silk or spice. Games offered another form of cultural dialogue. Chess moved westward from India, transforming as it went. Backgammon and its relatives appeared throughout the route, the clicking of game pieces as characteristic of caravanserai evenings as merchants' haggling was of mornings. Through play, strangers found common ground, competition governed by mutually understood rules, perhaps the most perfect metaphor for the trade itself. Science and technology transferred through observation as much as instruction. Windmills, water wheels, paper-making techniques, silk production, metallurgy, and glass-blowing all moved along the route. Sometimes the knowledge travelled openly, other times it was smuggled out despite official prohibitions, as when silkworms were allegedly hidden in the hollow walking sticks of monks bound for Constantinople. You've marvelled at how quickly new techniques spread. A more efficient harness design you first observed in Dunhuang now appears regularly in caravans from Samarkand. The shoulder collar that allows horses to pull heavier loads without choking has moved westward faster than any physical cargo could travel, passed from caravan to caravan like a useful rumour. Perhaps most significantly, the Silk Road carried perspective itself, the radical understanding that one's way of seeing the world was not universal. Travellers returned home with stories of peoples who ate different foods, worshipped different gods, organised families and communities in different ways, yet still laughed, loved, mourned and wondered at the same stars. This expansion of mental horizons proved more valuable than gold or jade, for it allowed innovations in governance, philosophy and social organisation. In Chang'an, a silk merchant tells you, they use examinations to select officials, not birth or wealth. The concept seems so foreign to your Persian companion that he laughs in disbelief, but the seed is planted. Ideas, once encountered, cannot be unthought. Cultural transfer was rarely simple adoption. More often, foreign elements underwent transformation as they moved. Buddhism took on Chinese characteristics as it travelled east, while paper-making techniques were adapted to different fibres as they moved west. Each culture along the route served as both receiver and transmitter, adapting what came before and passing it along changed. The Great Mongol Empire, stretching across much of the Silk Road in the 13th century, accelerated these exchanges through its policies of religious tolerance and administrative integration. Under their protection, artisans and scholars moved more freely than ever before. Persian astronomers worked in Chinese observatories. Central Asian engineers designed hydraulic systems for cities across the empire. European travellers returned with printing techniques previously unknown in the West. Technology transfer often came with unintended consequences. Paper, developed in China for wrapping and writing, ultimately transformed European society by making books more affordable, gradually broadening literacy beyond elites. This simple material change helped enable the Renaissance, the Reformation, and eventually the Scientific Revolution, outcomes its Chinese inventors could never have foreseen. Yet for all these grand historical movements, cultural exchange remained profoundly personal. It happened in moments of crisis, when you accepted medicine from a foreign doctor because pain overcame prejudice. It happened in moments of joy, when you learned a foreign dance because its rhythms moved something in your soul. It happened in countless small decisions to try, to listen, to adapt. Standing in the caravanserai courtyard preparing for another day's journey, you realise you are not the same person who began this trip. Your saddlebags contain foreign trinkets, yes, but your mind carries more valuable cargo. New words in new languages, techniques for predicting weather learned from Turkic nomads, recipes memorised from a Chinese cook, remedies for ailments you once thought incurable, prayers to gods whose names you couldn't pronounce 3 months ago. You've become a living vessel of cultural transmission, transformed by the road as surely as the road is transformed by those who travel it. Today you'll continue westward, carrying not just trade goods, but ideas that will subtly alter your homeland when you return. Some of these foreign elements you've embraced consciously. Others have worked their way into your thinking unnoticed, like pollen caught in a merchant's cloak. The caravanserai gate opens. Morning light streams across the courtyard. You lead your animals into the sun, joining once more the ancient current of humanity that flows across continents. Behind you, the fortress marketplace sanctuary that sheltered you last night already welcomes new travellers, new goods, new stories. The exchange continues, invisible but inexorable, remaking the world one journey at a time. As you depart, a young Chinese traveller heading east asks about conditions ahead. You share what you know, where water is plentiful, which paths has seen bandits, what villages welcome foreign traders, but you're sharing more than practical information. You're participating in the greatest exchange of all, the accumulated wisdom of the road itself. Not all treasures glitter. Not all transformations announce themselves with trumpets. Sometimes the most profound changes come quietly, carried in the baggage of ordinary travellers bound for distant markets, each one a bridge between worlds. Written in wounds and weathering. What will they make of these markings, those who stayed behind? The decision to return doesn't come all at once. It builds like a sandstorm on the horizon, distant at first, then suddenly upon you. Perhaps it begins with a letter from home, carried across impossible distances by a network of messengers. Perhaps it's the death of a fellow traveller, a sobering reminder of mortality. Or perhaps it's just the weight of accumulated strangeness, finally heavy enough to tip the scales. When you announce your intention to the caravan leader, he nods without surprise. He's seen it before, that look in the eyes of those who've had their fill of the road. The journey west is different, he tells you. You're carrying more than goods now, you're carrying stories. and stories weigh more than silk. Preparing for the return journey is both familiar and strange. You pack your treasures, the jade figurines, the rolls of silk, the paper books filled with knowledge no one in your homeland has ever seen. These are the tangible profits of your risk. But there are other treasures too, the ones you can't wrap in cloth or count in coins. The astronomy you learned from a Persian scholar under desert stars, the melodies a blind musician taught you on a moonlit night in Samarkand, the taste of fermented mare's milk shared from a Mongol's personal cup, a symbol of trust you hadn't earned but somehow received. And there are the people, the friends who became closer than blood through shared hardship, the quick-witted translator who saved your life by talking your way out of a warlord's prison, the quiet herbalist who nursed you through fever without asking payment, the grizzled caravan guard who taught you to listen for danger in the desert's silence. Some have died along the way, others continue eastward as you turn west. The goodbyes are brief, excessive emotion is a luxury the road doesn't encourage, yet each farewell carries the weight of mountains. Remember the Hamra, your oldest travelling companion says as you embrace one last time. Those who walk the same road, the bond that needs no explanation. You both know you'll never see each other again. You both pretend there's a chance you might. The westward caravan you join moves differently than those heading east. There's a strange energy to returning travellers. Less wide-eyed wonder, more watchful wariness. These are people who've seen too much to be easily surprised, but too much to be easily comforted. They carry knives in new places. They taste their food before committing to a mouthful. They know which dangers are worth fearing. The landscapes you traversed before greet you like old adversaries deserving respect. The mountains whose passes nearly killed you now seem to nod in recognition as you ascend their ancient paths. The deserts that burned your skin and parched your throat now whisper your name in their wind-shaped dunes. You're no longer a stranger to this vast emptiness. You've earned the right to cross it. But while the path is the same, you are not. The blisters that once bloomed on your feet are now impossible calluses. The sun that once made you dizzy now feels like an old companion overhead. The camel's swaying gait that once made your back scream in protest now rocks you to sleep as naturally as a mother's arms. Your body has been remade by the road, cell by cell, step by step. And your mind has become a crossroads in itself where languages, philosophies and gods mingle without borders. The certainties you carried from home have been worn smooth by exposure to 1,000 contradicting truths. You've prayed in Buddhist temples and Muslim mosques. You've spoken with fire worshippers and sky worshippers, with scholars who find divinity in mathematics and nomads who find it in the flight of an eagle. The world has grown both larger and smaller, larger in its endless variety, smaller in its shared humanity. As you cross back through lands now turned familiar, you notice changes. A village that was prosperous on your eastward journey now lies abandoned. A new temple stands where there was once only bare ground. Power has shifted. New lords rule from old fortresses. The road itself remains constant only in its inconstancy. Sometimes at night, staring up at the same stars that watched your outward journey, you wonder who awaits your return. Will your parents still live? Will your siblings recognize your weathered face? Will the love you left behind have kept faith, or moved on to a life without ghosts? Or will you be the ghost, a familiar shape filled with unrecognizable substance? You rehearse the stories you'll tell, then discard most of them. How can you describe the light breaking over the Pamirs at dawn to someone who's never left the valley of their birth? How can you explain the terror and wonder of your first sandstorm, when it felt like the world itself was being unmade around you? How can you convey the profound silence of the desert night so deep you can hear your own blood rushing in your veins? And what of the darker tales? The caravan massacred in the high passes, the slave markets of Samarkand where human lives are valued by the weight of silver, the plagues that sweep through crowded cities, leaving the dead stacked like cordwood outside the walls. The cruelties you witnessed, the cruelties you committed to survive, these stories catch in your throat when you practice them. As you near familiar lands, you find yourself calculating more than distance. You measure the wealth in your packs against the years of your absence. Was it worth it? The gold and jade and silk will bring comfort, perhaps even power. You've succeeded where many have failed. And yet what price can you place on the births you missed, the deaths you weren't present to mourn, the countless ordinary moments of home that slipped away while you chased horizons? The final village before your own brings a shock of recognition so powerful it nearly stops your breath. the smell of the local bread, the particular slant of the afternoon light, the cadence of your native tongue spoken without accent, these things bring tears you didn't expect. You have been gone so long. You have been gone just yesterday. And when at last you crest the final hill and see the smoke rising from the familiar jumble of houses that hold everything you once knew, you realize the final truth of all great journeys. The road changes more than where you are. It changes who you are. You left as one person. You return as another. Home awaits. But the Silk Road never truly releases those who have embraced its harsh beauty. Even as you walk the final steps toward the life you left behind, you know a part of you remains out there, with the camel bells and night fires, with the mountain passes and desert stars, with the friends made and lost, with the endless, dusty, dangerous, magnificent road that has remade you, stride by stride into a citizen of a larger world. You are home. You will never be home again. Both are true. Both are the gift and the price of all who dare to walk the road that connects worlds. In the quiet evenings of your old age, a scent or a slant of golden light can suddenly carry you back, to deserts under starry skies, to laughter around campfires, to the long winding road that once changed everything. The treasures you once traded, silk, jade, spices, are long gone. But what endures is what cannot be sold. The patience of the desert, the wisdom of strangers, the resilience forged on mountain paths. The Silk Road was never just about goods. It was a great conversation across time and space. Paper journeyed from China westward, transforming knowledge. Fruits like peaches and oranges travelled continents, bringing with them new flavours and names. Faiths, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam moved beside merchants, reshaping spiritual landscapes. And with these gifts came shadowed companions, disease, conquest and change. The road carried more than cargo, it carried culture. Sugar speaks of Sanskrit roots. Paper traces back to Chinese craft. Even your alphabet is a mosaic of borrowed forms refined by trade and translation. And what of you? Your hands, once gripping reins and scrolls, now rest with stories etched deep into their lines, stories of bridges built, of lives touched, of a world knit together not by empires, but by exchange. Caravans have vanished. Sea routes and satellites have replaced camel trails, but the essence remains. Container ships, planes, and fibre-optic cables now carry the same human impulse to connect, to trade, to transform. The Silk Road never ended, it evolved. And though the desert is quiet, you still hear echoes, the jingle of camel bells, the whisper of many tongues around a fire. You know now that the greatest legacy of the road isn't in museums or ruins, but in the way it shaped how we think, speak, eat, and dream. If the young ask, tell them this: the Silk Road wasn't just a route. It was a revelation, a process of becoming, a thread that wove civilizations into a shared tapestry. And today, every shared idea, every cross-cultural spark, every bold step into the unknown, we are still walking that ancient road. The road lives on, not in sand but in spirit,